Because in the previous episodes we talked about how Allah makes himself known, loved and praised through the manifestations of his names and attributes in the universe and in you, you should also certainly know that Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, who is infinitely distinct from all deficiencies and imperfect attributes, is also infinitely beyond any form of need. Neediness is an attribute of only created beings. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu has absolutely no need for you to praise or worship him. He possesses absolute perfection in his essence. His essence is sufficient unto himself. He is infinitely divine and infinitely beyond any need for the praise of humans and creations. If you were to imagine before your eyes in your mind a realm just like this universe, that realm and all the beings within it, humans, animals, plants and so on, would exist through your existence and the concentration, the direction of your will. They would never be able to exist on their own, and they would never be able to remain in form without your existence, your will. If the people in that imaginary realm of yours knew you, loved you, and showered you with praise, would it be that you are in need of that praise and love of theirs? Of course not. But you would be pleased with their praising, and they would be the ones in need of you, while you would be beyond any need for them. Similarly, along with all the beings within it, this universe too is like that. Only, for Allah, it does not even weigh as much as an imagination does. While even you are not in need of the love and praise of the people in the realm you make in that imagination of yours through your will, despite you yourself are a weak, created being in need, how could it be that Allah, the possessor of infinite power, who is Aziz and Jalil, would astaghfirullah need the servitude, praise and love of his servants in this universe he created, which is not even in the degree of an imagination to him? Would you be in need of being loved by your shadow? Of course you would not. Humans and the universe too are like a shadow of the names and attributes of Allah. While even you are not in such need, how could it be that the Rabb, the Lord of all worlds, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, would be in need of the love and praise of human beings who are but the shadow of his names and attributes? And it is absolutely you who is infinitely in need of praising him and loving him. Just as the human loves and appreciates themselves but is not in need of being loved, praised or appreciated by their own shadow, Allah, infinitely far from that, is never in need of the love or praise of the creation, which is merely a shadow of his names and attributes. And already, only Allah can love and appreciate himself in the most befitting manner. His love and appreciation for himself is enough for him, Jalla Jalaluhu. This is just like the sun appreciating itself by its very existence and not needing the praise of its reflections in mirrors. If the sun were alive and conscious, that is, if its warmth were its life and the 7 colors in its light were its 7 attributes, like its knowledge, power, volition, sight, hearing and speech, then a single sun would manifest in every mirror, every reflective surface at the same time, attending to each one separately yet simultaneously, and none of these manifestations would ever occupy its essence. It would have brought every mirror completely under the dominion of its power and knowledge. It would speak to every human through the mirror in their hand in proportion to the capacity of that mirror they hold. There would be no difference between it speaking to one person and speaking to all people at the same time. In this case, the sun would not be in need of the little suns reflected in mirrors, loving, praising, or appreciating it. As for the mirrors, loving and appreciating the sun would be a beauty and refinement for themselves, and this would undoubtedly please the sun, However, the sun would never be in need of being pleased with this. Just like as it is in this representation, the whole of existence too is a mirror to the names and attributes of Allah. And they reflect the light of those divine names and attributes upon themselves. Allah praises Himself and makes the existence which is in the status of a mirror, a reflection, praise Him as well. Allah honors them by making them praise Him, and this situation pleases Him in a way that befits His essence. Thus, starting with humans, the desire, the servitude, the love and the appreciation of all creatures towards Allah is a blessing and beauty for the creatures themselves, and it pleases Allah. However, this pleasure, being pleased about this, is never a need for Him, Jalla Jalaluhu. Think about this. If you were to take in a helpless, poor and needy person who came to your door, feed them and provide for their needs, would it be that you are in need of their contentment? Certainly not. However, you would be pleased with that contentment of theirs. That you want to please them, and your pleasure with their contentment does not arise from a need. Similarly, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, in a manner befitting Himself, is pleased with bestowing His favors upon the human He created, showing mercy to them, pleasing them, and granting their rights. However, this pleasure is never due to a need. It is important not to confuse need with contentment, because contentment does not arise from neediness. Allah makes humans praise and love Him so that they will be elevated through their profound love and servitude to Him. However, Allah has no need whatsoever for their gratitude or praise. Allah is Al-Aziz, the most powerful, the strongest, and Al-Jalil above all in dignity and rank. His essence is sufficient for Himself. Being praised and appreciated is the right of the exalted attributes of Allah. Since He is worthy of praise in absolute terms, of course He Himself praises Himself, because He does not wrong His own truth, nor does He allow it to be wronged. Allah is just, and the just one is first and foremost just toward His own divinity and His divine truths, so that no deficiency is attributed to His grandeur and majesty, no injustice is done to His divine truths and to His essence, and His divinity is not disrespected. He praises His own essence Himself and upholds the declaration of that He is Allah. In the same way, He wants that those divine truths and eternal attributes to be praised and properly appreciated, so that humankind will be elevated in this direction and recognize, submit the rights of Al-Haq. For recognizing, submitting and acknowledging the rights of the truth is also an act of justice, which is also commanded on human. Just as a fair person becomes pleased with serving justice, delivering rights to their rightful owners, fulfilling the rights of the oppressed, their contentment, their gratitude, and taking vengeance for them by punishing the oppressors, though this gladness is not a need. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the possessor of infinite wisdom and justice, who grants each being in existence its due rights according to their decreed abilities and functions, that is, providing all beings with the necessary faculties in the required quantity and measure to exist or sustain life, who gives everything a body with precise delicate scales, balances, and peculiar measures, who clothes them all in their appearance and places them all in their rightful positions, does not do injustice to his divine truths. And just as he himself does justice to the rights of his divine truths, he makes his creatures affirm and appreciate them as well. And he tells humankind that he tests them in appreciating his divinity and doing justice to the rights of his divine truths. Besides, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was astaghfirullah in need of human praise, he would never allow disbelief. Then just as he makes his existence and oneness evident through his blessings in all things, likewise he would also show his very essence directly, making himself plainly visible, thus drawing forth humanity's gratitude and servitude in the most magnificent way. He would never permit their disbelief, vile slanders, betrayals, or insults. So, even the very existence of disbelievers' disbelief testifies as clearly as the sun that Allah is infinitely beyond all deficiency, need, or necessity for worship or praise. Undoubtedly, Allah commands servitude to Himself to elevate humankind, while humankind rebels and tries to make others rebel against Him only to debase themselves and those they cause to rebel. Whereas, appreciating the beauty and the perfection, the highest attributes, elevates humans. Humankind itself is a witness to this absolute truth. For instance, when a person does a good deed or something nice, they expect gratitude in return, but if they receive none, they may say not even a simple thank you was given, unable to accept that their kindness has gone unacknowledged and unappreciated. However, this expectation does not come from a need for gratitude, but from the failure of the receiving end to duly recognize and appreciate the goodness and the beauty of the act itself. Gratitude not only elevates the one who expresses it in the eyes of others, but it is also the right of the good deed and beauty itself. For just as recognizing the rights of anyone and everything elevates a person, failing to acknowledge them is a betrayal to the justice that should be served to those rights. Certainly, loyalty, fidelity, truthfulness, love, appreciating blessings, gratitude, and expressing it to the one who bestows generosity are qualities that elevate the human. Without these qualities, it is impossible to speak of humanness. These are the sources of humankind's happiness. Therefore, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu has no need for human praise, love, or worship. On the contrary, it is the humankind that is in need of praising Allah and worshipping Him Jalla Jalaluhu. Because even if a person feels physically healthy, still they fall ill spiritually, and worship is the remedy for a person's spiritual wounds. Perhaps would you not know with absolute certainty how meaningless it would be, for example, if a sick man were to reproach a compassionate doctor who persistently urges him to take the medicine that will heal him by telling him something like, "What need do you have that you insist on this medicine for me?" So, Allah, the eternal healer and the curer, has prescribed worship, the salah foremost among them, as a remedy for these spiritual ailments. And yet, humans complain just like that sick man who reproaches the compassionate doctor by saying, What need does Allah have for worship that He so firmly commands it and threatens with punishment for its neglect? However, humans are spirit. They are not merely body. Just as the body has its sustenance, the soul with its subtle faculties like the heart, conscience, and intellect also have their own spiritual nourishments in a manner appropriate for them and spiritual remedies that will cure their spiritual ailments. And the nourishment for these is worship and gratitude to begin with. Just as it would be wrong to provide only the fuel, which is the sustenance of a car, while leaving the driver hungry, it would be an even more dreadful mistake and calamity to nourish the body, which is in place of that vehicle, while leaving the soul hungry. The cause behind all the psychological struggles, depressions, and suicidal thoughts people experience is, in fact, this. If humans do not feed their souls with worship, which is their nourishment, and focus only on worldly life, living a life confined to the body, the worldly life will turn into a spiritual hell for them. Indeed, the heart longs for Allah and can only be satisfied through love for Him, servitude to Him, and gratitude to Him. When the heart is deprived of nourishment, it silently cries out, and from the cries of the heart, the soul is suffocated. And from the suffocation of the soul, psychological distress arises. And humans, in order to avoid feeling this hellish state and dreadful spiritual torment, they try to distract themselves with various means and preoccupations. They become immersed in certain sins, intoxicate their minds, and bury their heads in the sand of heedlessness just like an ostrich. In doing so, they believe they can suppress the painful cries of the soul. But just like when a sultan punishes those who violate the rights of his people in order to preserve their justice, likewise one who abandons worship and salah is also punished, because they commit a great spiritual transgression and injustice against the rights of all existence, living and non-living, that are subjects in the dominion of Allah, of the Sultan of the past and future eternity. Because the perfection, the true worth, and the value of beings are manifested with glorification and worship on their faces that look at the artist who created them. A person who abandons worship does not and cannot see the worship of creation and perhaps denies it. Then that person affronts existence, denies the perfection of creation, and violates their rights, because in their minds they attempt to dethrone beings that are high in status in terms of worship and glorification, each a divine letter and a mirror to the names and attributes of Allah, from their lofty positions, seeing them as worthless, unimportant, dutiless, lifeless, and in a state of ruin. Because everyone sees the universe through their own mirror. Allah has created humans also as a measure and scale for the universe. For each person, He has granted a personal realm from this world, and He shows the color of that personal realm according to the faith in the heart of that person. For instance, a person who weeps in utter despair and sorrow sees the existence itself weeping in a state of despair and sorrow. Whereas a person who is filled with cheerfulness and smiles out of the deep joy sees the universe in a cheerful and smiling manner as well. So, a person who engages in worship and glorification in a contemplative and serious manner discovers and sees to some degree the truly existing and certain worship and glorification of the creation to Allah. Yet a person who abandons worship due to either heedlessness or denial hallucinates existence in a way that is completely opposite and contradictory to the truth of its perfection. They see beings as a mere plaything of the non-existent coincidence, as aimless, purposeless, and wisdomless. Thereby, they spiritually violate their rights. Moreover, a person who abandons worship not only wrongs the rights and the law of the creatures in existence, but because they are not the ones who possess themselves, they also wrong their own nafs, which is the servant of their true possessor, their Malik Allah. And Allah, who is their Malik, threatens severely to take the rights of his servants from their nafsul amara, which is the part of their worldly selves that incites them toward wrongdoing and derives pleasure from it, abandoning the result of the creation. The purpose of the creation's nature, which is worship, is considered to exceed the boundaries set by divine wisdom and volition. For this reason, punishment is incurred. In short, the one who abandons worship wrongs both their own self and also commits an injustice and transgression against the rights of the perfection of the universe. Yes, just as disbelief is an insult also to the existence, abandoning worship too means denying the perfection of the universe as well. So, since abandoning worship is an act of transgressing the bounds set by divine wisdom, it renders a person deserving of a dreadful threat and severe punishment. Meanwhile, the punishment for denial necessitates an eternal hell, for this denial is not, as some assume, a limited offense that warrants only a finite penalty. Since these people do not know Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, they cannot comprehend the nature of the denial and betrayal they commit against Him. Then they take this betrayal lightly and assume that disbelief in Allah is merely a limited sin. They cannot accept an unlimited punishment for a sin they assume to be limited. Then they falsely claim that this is not befitting for divine justice. Astaghfirullah. However, the sin in question is not limited. Since Allah is infinite with His essence, names, attributes, and their manifestations, the sin of denying Him is also graded, scaled by the measure of eternity. No matter how good a person may be in terms of their humanity, no matter how many good deeds they perform, even if they spend their entire life in charity and benevolence, with a single moment of denial unless they return from it, they commit an infinite oppression and crime against the truth. And an infinite crime necessitates an infinite punishment. Because 1 minute of disbelief means denying the eternal names and attributes of Allah and turning the wisdom of all the realms and all the beings within them, which are mirrors to His names and attributes, into futility and absurdity. Astaghfirullah. And insulting creatures by denying their servitude to Allah, their worship, their glorification, and their perfection, rejecting the testimony of countless evidences of Tawheed and viewing them as mere playthings of coincidence, is to violate the rights and the law of existence. Denying the eternal realm of the Akhirah and all the beings that will live for eternity within it, along with their mirroring to the names and attributes of Allah, is to deny and attempt to insult and belittle Allah's infinite blessings. The word kafir also means to cover, to conceal. Thus, A disbelieving person is called a kafir, also because they try to cover and hide all these truths with their denial. So, the rights of those eternal truths and blessings are taken back from them through the eternal torment of hell. Since not punishing the deniers with eternal hell in response to their denial would not befit the divine justice, the Quran Azim Shan strongly warns the people of Shirk and declares to them the punishment of the eternal Jahannam.